As you know, Microsoft Excel is used to organize data, make calculations, draw charts, and that sort of thing. So it has most of the options available in Microsoft Word, like changing the font, changing the text size, colors, everything, text positioning, as well as other options, just options dedicated to it. Now we can insert pictures, for example, like this. We can reposition pictures, we can resize them, rotate them, reposition them, that sort of thing. Also, we can use shapes. For example, we have the ability to insert shapes like so. Just a moment. So, as I was saying, we can resize the shapes, we can reposition them. Same with Microsoft Word, okay? We can add text, we can group them, like we saw in Microsoft Word. Same options. Now, what Excel is used for, specifically on your part as teachers, you can organize data concerning students. Like we saw last time, we've seen how to use multiple functions and how to apply them to data. Okay, for example, we're gonna see. Okay, let's start by making a table like so, and here we have, for example, student. Here we have two, three. Now we can do now for students we can name them student A, student B, C, D, F. Now, let's give them some marks, okay? For example, let's say student 1 got 18 out of 20, 14 out of 20, 15 out of 20. For student B, he got, for example, 10, 9, 8. Student 3, 2, 4, 7, 5. And student F, for example, got, let's say, 8, 6, and 6. Now let's say the mark is, for example, this M1 times its coefficient plus M2 times its coefficient plus M3 times its coefficient, and then divided by the sum of the coefficients, which is, for example, let's say 1, 1, 2. Now the sum of the coefficients will be 4. Now we can do this as equal sign. Let's say B2, the cell B2 times 1 stays as B2 plus, or let's be more specific. For example, let's go with plus C2 plus D2. Now D2 is multiplied by 2, and then let's divide everything by 4, okay, which is the sum of the coefficients. We have 2, 1, 1. Okay, now let's go with this result. Now whenever I click on this cell right here, notice here in the formula bar we have the function applied on this cell. Okay, is everything clear? Can I continue with the demonstration? Okay, so moving on. Now if I want to apply the same function on the other students, I can just write it again, but that would be tedious. Okay, now one way I can do this is by grabbing the lower right corner. Here, when my cursor turns into a black plus sign like this, I click and hold with the right mouse button and I drag down. Okay, I drag down on on however many cells I want the function to be applied to. Okay, now once I let go, this function will be applied and it will calculate the marks of all the other students. Notice here, whenever I click on these cells, the only thing that changes in the formula bar is the cell numbers or the references of the cell. Here we have B3, C3, and D3. Here we have B4, C4, and D4, B5, C5, and D5, and so on. Okay? Now, this was easy. Now, whenever I, for example, change a value that is included in this formula, the formula recalculates the value again. For example, let's give him 10, for example, and let's move on. Here the value was just 875, now it's 9. Okay, now if we change it back, now it's 875 again. Okay, so these formulas are sensitive to any changes in the data that is a part of the equation. Okay, now for this note here, we're about to do an if statement. Now if we have the logical test, which is, for example, if the mark which is in E2 is, for example, inferior or equal to 6, now the value of this cell should give us this value. Now if not, we should do another test. Now the value is, if false, is, we do another test. Now if the value is not inferior or equal to 6, we have to test if E2 is now inferior or equal to 10, inferior to 10, excuse me. Now if it is inferior or equal to 10, the value should be in there. Okay, for example, now if it is not inferior or equal to 10, we should test if this value E2 is inferior to, for example, 15, or let's say 15, yeah, or let's say, for example, 12, let's say 12. متوسط, for example. Now if not, if the value of E2 is inferior to, for example, 17, let's say جيد. Now everything else, what remains? Now we've done the case if it's inferior or equal to 6, then if it's inferior to 10, now greater than 6 and inferior to 10, greater or equal to 10 and inferior to 12. Now if it's greater than 12, greater or equal to 12 and inferior to 17, now the rest is value is if false. Now if the value is false, the only thing remaining is above or equal to 17, which is ممتاز. If I can find the letter. ممتاز. Now we have to see how many opening brackets we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to do 4 closing parentheses. Okay. Now this function, what it does, now if you can follow along with me, I will explain it in detail. Now this function verifies if the student has a mark that is inferior or equal to 6, then it puts توبيخ as the value of the cell, if it's true. If not, it tests if that value, if the mark of the student is inferior to 10. If true, it gives the student in there. Now, if not, it tests if the value of this cell, which is the mark of the student, is inferior to 12. Now, once it's, for example, checking if it's inferior to 12, it knows that it's not inferior to 10 and not inferior or equal to 6. Okay, so it's between, it's checking if it's between 10 and 12. If true, it gives him متوسط. Now, if not, meaning it's greater or equal to 12. Okay, if not, yes, then it checks if the value is inferior to 17. If the value is inferior to 17, it gives him جيد. And if not, we don't have to check anymore. So the student has got a grade that is above or equal to 17, and we give him ممتاز. Okay, let's try it. This one is جيد. Let's copy it using the same method. For example, let's go. Works fine. Okay, it works fine. Now, if before I continue, is everything clear thus far? Do you understand how this function works? Okay, so we call this a nested if function. What we mean nested is a function within a function. Okay, so this function is a function within another function. Now we have an if, now a second if, which is part of the first if, the third if is part of the second if, and the final if is part of the third if. Okay, so once we, for example, let's change some marks around. For example, let's go with this student. Let's change, let's give him a 5 here. Now this changed his mark to a value that is inferior to 12. Now once this value is inferior to 12, the nested if function that we've written recalculated the value of this cell based on the value of this cell, which in itself was recalculated based on these values, these 3 values. Okay, so do you have any questions? No, is it clear? So, do you have any questions about anything else? So, later I'm gonna provide you with a summary on what we've seen, everything we've seen this semester. I will send it to you via email, and you will find it in Moodle also. Okay? And I will be uploading this final session to YouTube and to the Google's Classroom I created for you. Okay? Okay, so if there are no more questions, no problem. If there are no more questions, so I wish you good luck in the exam, and we will meet again, inshallah, once we're. Yes? Yes, go ahead. The type of questions. For the type of questions, it will be a simple exam. A mix of everything. It will be a mix of everything, okay? So not strictly like you mentioned. It will be a mix of everything. So if there are no more questions, could be, yes, I can neither confirm nor deny. So if there are no further questions, no problem. If there are no further questions, we will meet again, inshallah, at in the day of the exam. I wish you good luck, and إلى اللقاء.